Dr. Husnul Amin, please.
Thank you so much, Raz, Robert, and Sunita. It was moving and it was emotionally charging, actually. Unfortunately, here I'm sitting and in Islamabad, the discussion is not about the miseries, Afghans and the Afghan women and children, but it's only about the withdrawal. And it's a kind of celebration. People are celebrating that the Taliban have conquered Afghanistan and they have actually, defeated a superpower in the West. So that's actually the predominant debate and discussion going on in the media, as well as people are celebrating, glorifying these ideas here. So recently I was sitting in a Pashtun hujra and the discussion going on, just elders were sitting and they were discussing that what kind of decision has Biden taken and the haste, and wasn't there a better withdrawal strategy than the current one? Because actually everyone has been endangered with this current decision. So I will be presenting about the Pashtun people living across the border on the Pakistani side and what could be the possible impact on the Pashtun culture, society, politics, economy. And so before discussing that, you might have heard about the Duran line, which actually divides Afghanistan and Pakistan. And the line separates both countries. It was agreed upon by the British Secretary to India, Duran, as well as the Amir Abdul Rahman in 1893. So it actually divides the Pashtuns tribes. So some people like Shinwari tribe, some people are living here and some are living there. So it's as is the usual case globally in the partition, the flawed partition, the boundaries, the artificial boundaries which have been drawn. So some people are living here and some are there. So there is actually the people have relatives on the other side, and some people are living on this side, and there is this infiltration issue. And the border, the people living in the tribal belt, it used to be called FATA, the federally administered tribal areas, which was regulated by the frontier crime regulations. In that area, in that territory, which is almost 2,700 kilometers long border between Afghanistan and Pakistan, and like it's 1,640 miles long. It passes through the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province as well as the Balochistan province, and it is actually connecting 10 provinces on the other side of the border in the Afghanistan. So during the Afghan war, there was a huge impact on this area, and this was highlighted in the news. The tribal belt, Waziristan, and these might you have heard about these. So this area became actually a safe haven for the terrorists and militants. All global terrorists were brought over here, and they were populated here in this area. Their training camps were here. Then the jihadi madaris were established for their training, for their religious training as well. So there's a whole episode which we are aware of, and it created a lot of havoc and mayhem in Pakistan. In 2006, the Taliban, which were not an organized and a cohesive group in Pakistan, they organized themselves under the TTP, under the title TTP. TTP is Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, which is the movement for the Pakistani Taliban. So they established themselves in the tribal belt, and then they started their terrorist activities and attacks. So before I discuss the potential impact of the recent changes which have taken place in Afghanistan, uh, let me just give a brief framework in which actually I will be discussing this, because this is not the first time that there is a crisis in Afghanistan and it will be impacting Pakistan economy and the Pashtun belt. It is almost third or the fourth time in the last 40 years. So what happened in the last 3 or 4 times was the Pashtun society, which was already actually weaponized because people keep guns and private, weapons at home. But it was extremely weaponized during the Afghan war, and all modern weapons were brought into this region, and the people had access to modern weapons. So the Pashtun culture and society was actually drastically weaponized. Then the drug trafficking started, and the poppy cultivation and the opium trade. This was started on the border side, and this it had a huge impact on Pashtun society. Religious conservatism and the jihadi madaris, these actually, there was an exponential growth in the region, and it killed the moderate and the liberal narrative and the progressive narratives in society. Uh, so all secular and liberal intellectuals, musicians, artists, either they were killed or either they were compelled to leave the country and settle abroad in the Middle East and UK and everywhere. So this was something which was going on. Uh, but despite these developments, there were some positive changes as well, and which were some were mentioned by Robert. But on this side, there was a huge growth in new middle classes. So income coming from abroad as remittance. Then even the drug money contributed to that. The underground economy contributed to that. Then the productivity increased, and people had new income, and which generated a new Pashtun middle class on both sides of the border. And then there were a growth in the university campuses. So the Pashtun belt on the Pakistani side is having more than 40 universities now. Every district is having one modern new university, new liberal university, which is actually providing a space for interaction and engagement and discussion. And I think the same is true for the other side as well. I can see Jalalabad emerging, developing as a city like Peshawar, and a new middle class emerged in the last 20 years on that side as well. Also, the universities and growth in media and cell phones. If you go back to 2001, you will see there is zero cell phone, but you will see now 90% of the people having access to cell phones, smartphones. Then the girls' enrollment, actually, I think it's more than 80% now, is according to the World Bank statistics. So this all this rupture in these things created a rupture in the tribal formation as well on both sides. And we had these new social movements, which is called the Pashtun Tahaffuz movement, the new civil rights movement, which was initiated in the tribal belt. And they were asking for constitutional rights, freedom of expression, identities, language and culture, and these things. And unlike the traditional old guard nationalists, these new social movement activists, they were talking within the ambit of the Pakistani constitution. So they were mainly focusing on the constitutional freedoms guaranteed in the Pakistani 1973 constitution. So these discussions were going on before the Taliban they made advances in Afghanistan. Uh, just very quickly, I will focus on a few things. One is that we don't have, a data on which the basis of which we can predict what is going to happen, but we have a historical data and information, and something as anecdotal account which is going on and which is going actually to change the many things in Pakistani society and specifically the Pashtun belt. The first thing is a narrative building and strengthening of the narrative that, a conservative social force like Taliban can defeat, the world most modern uh, military and, the resourceful countries. So this narrative is so much damaging locally that now there are discussions within the Pakistani Taliban that if we can defeat Americans in the West there, why can't we defeat Pakistani military in Pakistan? Like this is just possible for us because we defeated there. So, this whole withdrawal strategy created so much space for these narratives. Uh, in Pakistan, in Islamabad, in the capital city, just today it's going on the Red Mosque. This the dilemma of the Red Mosque last year. Uh, they are now wavering the Taliban flag now, and they say that we are supporting them and we need and we want actually that kind of system in Pakistan. And then there is a tremendous growth in bomb blasts in different places, specifically in Waziristan and the Balochistan area. So a kind of narrative is in the making, and people are celebrating that narrative as well. The second thing is, uh, you know, just assume if there is no uh, inclusivity in the government, and there is the ethnic and the religious tensions mount to a certain level, and there is a humanitarian crisis, for example, which is actually there. Sunita mentioned some, and I knew that people say that there is 1 million children and actually may die due to hunger, and similar other stories are coming up. So if that situation arises in Afghanistan, then that could lead to a civil war, and that civil war could could lead to another more dangerous thing, which is the emergence of the ISIS, the Daesh, the ISIS Khorasan, which is already there, and they have splinter individuals here in Pakistan as well, and they have an enormous lethal capacity to create actually larger damage than the Taliban. At a certain point, we all have to make then choices. Taliban, the lesser evil, versus the bigger evil, which will be the Daesh. So you see, I think the global international community should also consider this thing as well, that the evil which is Taliban, maybe at a certain point you will consider it a lesser evil than the one which is in the making in the region. Uh, just if you consider the historical data in Iraq, when I think it was 500,000 soldiers were like they lost their jobs, and these people were readily available to Daesh, and there was the recruitment of the Baas party and the activists, the secular people. Here you see, I was just today asking one Afghan colleague that what happened to the 300,000 soldiers, which actually the Biden is repeatedly talking about. Where are they now? So they are jobless. They are not having salaries, and they are readily available, very well trained in modern technologies and everything, and they are available for, if there is some financial support for them, they can be hired and recruited by the militant organizations, which could be then a lethal thing. Uh, Another thing is, if the Taliban, if they do not keep up to the promises and their ideological commitments, then there will be huge secessions in the movement, because people, they have trained in the last 20-30 years that we will bring that ideal kind of caliphate and Islamic state and stricter version of Sharia. So if they don't bring that, and of course they can't do that because they are looking for recognition. As Robert mentioned, that their entry into Kabul was not like in the 90s, and they are considering several changes as well, and they are looking forward to recognition. So for that, they will make several compromises. So a secession from within the ranks of Taliban has already started, and those who believe and who were indoctrinated and who were trained in a very strict mode of Sharia, they are now looking forward to, Daesh and such organizations which can truly implement that kind of global caliphate and like that. So uh, these were few things I just wanted to discuss. And uh, just as a final word, I would say, what is the way forward actually? Uh, we need actually an inclusive government. This is just a debate going on everywhere. And we need, uh, we should not actually, as a global community, focus on, expecting a liberal kind of Western democracy. And that was not what Taliban aimed for. The At most, what we can expect is just to ensure that they avoid the humanitarian crisis, and they ensure and guarantee very minimum basic human rights. And then we can enter into, a long run process in which many other changes can be brought in. Thank you so much actually, and I'm under pressure of time, so because another speaker has to present as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Husnul Amin.